Morgan Rogers, when you have a player like that in your side, you're always going to have a chance.
When we're looking at a player that right now I feel like I'd rather have in my team than Phil Foden of Man City, then I think there's an underappreciatedness of just how good he is.
Morgan Rogers is just 23 in 2025/26. He's already got 7 goals and 3 assists in 17 games. That's not form, that's a season taking shape. Here's the scary part, his XG sits at 2.32. He's not living off tap-ins. He's scoring goals the numbers don't expect. Long-range strikes, early decisions, risks most players won't take until they're chasing the game. He's hit the woodwork twice, buried a free kick,
Rogers scores it!
and racked up 67 touches in the opposition box. Rogers isn't along for the ride. He's driving it. Look at his shot map. 7 on target inside the box, 8 from outside. 2 ways to hurt you. Arrive late or pull the trigger early, before the defense can breathe. And he's not just attacking. 1,518 minutes played, 69 duels won, 11 aerials, 18 tackles, 9 interceptions. He's not some luxury player drifting through a good team. He's setting the tempo, dragging games his way. Now here's where it gets interesting. Villa didn't buy a superstar. They spent roughly £8 million on a guy most people wrote off as the City talent who never made it. The loans, the championship grind, the long road back. Fast forward to December 2025. Villa are in the mix and Rogers is producing match-winning moments like it's routine. So the question isn't just how good is Morgan Rogers, it's this: how did a player with that path end up deciding Premier League title races? Morgan Elliott Rogers did not grow up learning how to drift through games. He grew up learning how to drive them. Born in Halesowen in the West Midlands, Rogers was shaped by a football-first household. Kicking a ball was not an organized activity, it was the default state. Back gardens, local pitches, older brothers, repetition. What formed early was not polish, but intent. He wanted the ball, and once he had it, he wanted to go forward. That instinct followed him into West Bromwich Albion's academy, where he joined at the age of 7. Even as his position changed on team sheets, winger, midfielder, striker, his behavior never did. He played like an attacker, direct carries, early shots, a physical edge that separated him from players his age. Coaches didn't need to convince him to be brave. They had to teach him when to slow down. By his mid-teens, Rogers was already playing above his age group, scoring regularly for England youth sides and standing out not because he was tidy, but because he was assertive. At 16, he made his senior debut for West Brom in the FA Cup, coming on late against Brighton, having been in school earlier that same day. It was a symbolic moment. Talent was obvious. The question was where it would be refined. That question arrived quickly. In August 2019, Manchester City signed Rogers. On paper, it was a dream move. Elite facilities, world-class coaching, a club that developed attackers better than almost anyone in Europe. But City is not an academy that waits. It is an ecosystem where every player is the next one, and every week without minutes quietly pushes you further back in line. Rogers never made a senior appearance, not because he wasn't talented, but because opportunity is ruthless at the top. Training sharpened him, standards rose, but development stalled where it matters most: competitive football. And that's the lesson City teaches without saying it out loud. Training improves your ceiling, minutes build your career. So Rogers left the comfort of potential and went looking for reality. His first true education came at Lincoln City in League One. This is where football stops being theoretical. He played every week, felt physical contact early, and learned what it means to perform when points actually matter. He scored 6 league goals, won Young Player of the Month, and more importantly, learned rhythm, how to arrive late in the box, how to survive second balls, how to stay effective in games that don't suit you. The step up to AFC Bournemouth in the championship was less kind. Fewer starts, more substitute appearances, momentum harder to find, but that experience mattered. It taught him patience and how to impact games without being central to them. Then came Blackpool FC, a relegation fight, pressure football, less possession, more duels. Decisions had consequences. One mistake could decide a season. Rogers didn't dominate games, but he learned to endure them. He scored a decisive late goal on the final day away at Norwich, a moment that said more about composure than flair. By this point, the physicality people noticed early in his career had become functional, not just strength. timed strength, not just running, purposeful running. He could carry the ball late in games. He could absorb contact and still execute. The raw traits were now usable at senior speed. That's when everything clicked. In July 2023, Rodgers made a permanent move to Middlesbrough FC. For the first time, he wasn't a loanee or a project. He was a plan. He was given role clarity and responsibility, and he responded immediately. In the 2023-24 EFL Cup, he scored 5 goals, finishing as the competition's top scorer and driving Boro to the semifinals. Those goals mattered because of context, knockout rounds, tight games, high pressure. Scouts stopped debating his profile and started calculating value. The question was no longer what is he? It became who gets him next. By the time Aston Villa moved, Morgan Rodgers was no longer potential waiting to be unlocked. He was production earned the long way, and that long way explains everything that comes next. When Aston Villa moved for Morgan Rodgers in February 2024, the fee told part of the story, around £8 million, rising with add-ons, but not the important part. This was not a market gamble or a depth signing, it was a profile purchase. Unai Emery does not recruit positions, he recruits behaviors, and the behavior Villa needed was an attacker who could carry the ball through pressure and still arrive with end product when the move matured. Rodgers fit that brief immediately. The Premier League debut came fast. 3 days after signing, he stepped onto the pitch in a 5-0 away win at Sheffield United. Not a cameo designed for applause. A functional introduction inside a dominant performance. From the start, his usage was deliberate. He was not pinned to the touchline. He wasn't asked to hold width. He drifted, sometimes left, sometimes central, sometimes as a second runner beyond the striker. His role changed with the game state, not the team sheet. That flexibility became the constant. As minutes increased, the pattern held. Rodgers was rarely the highest touch player, but he was often the one breaking the first line. Carries into traffic, early shots before blocks set, runs that forced center backs to step out, creating space for others. Emery trusted him because he solved problems inside the structure rather than demanding freedom from it. Then came the night that changed how he was perceived. On 29th January 2025, Aston Villa hosted Celtic in the Champions League. Within 5 minutes, Rodgers had scored twice. By the end of the night, he had a hat trick and Villa had a 4-2 win. The goals mattered. The timing mattered more. The first 2 finishes weren't hopeful strikes. They were calculated arrivals. Delayed runs into the box, body shape set early, finishes chosen before the ball reached him. He didn't fade after the early burst either. He kept pressing, kept carrying, kept demanding the ball. That's the difference between a hot spell and authority. Big players don't just score. They change how a stadium feels. Europe took notice because the performance answered a specific question. Could he do this at elite tempo? The answer arrived quickly and loudly. 3 months later, the stage got bigger. In the Champions League quarterfinal first leg, Aston Villa traveled to Paris to face Paris Saint-Germain. Villa lost 3-1, but Rodgers scored their goal. Away, under pressure, in a game where chances are rare and margins brutal. That goal wasn't about form, it was about temperament. Quarterfinal away legs strip players down. You don't get time, you don't get space, you don't get a second invitation. Rodgers took his. By that point, the arc was clear. Villa hadn't bought a winger, or a number 10, or a project. They had bought a player whose game translated across contexts. Domestic control, European chaos, early pressure, late game tension. That is why his rise didn't feel sudden inside the club. It felt expected, because when Unai Emery buys a player, he isn't asking where you play. He's asking what problem you solve when the game tightens. Morgan Rodgers had already answered that, in England and now in Europe. By the time the 2025-26 season settled into rhythm, Morgan Rodgers had moved past the phase where performances are judged in flashes. This was about repeatability, whether his game could hold up across different opponents, different game states, and different types of pressure. It has. Across the opening half of the league campaign, Rodgers has delivered 7 goals and 3 assists in 17 Premier League appearances, logging 1,518 minutes. Those numbers matter, but the trend beneath them matters more. His influence has grown as the season has progressed. Touches per 90 have risen, passing accuracy has climbed into the mid-70s, and his involvement in final third actions has increased markedly between the opening weeks and match weeks 6 to 16. That is not form, that is adaptation. Tactically, Aston Villa are not asking Rodgers to dominate the ball. They are asking him to decide moments. He often starts from the left but drifts inside early, positioning himself between fullback and center back, a zone that forces decisions. Step out and he carries through contact, holds shape and he shoots early, overload his side and he vacates it, opening lanes for runners behind him. That versatility has been decisive in matches where Villa needed the attack to change gear. Against Fulham early in the season, Rodgers' assist came not from a highlight dribble but from timing, receiving under pressure, drawing defenders, and releasing the ball at the exact moment the defensive line collapsed. It was a reminder that his value isn't only in finishing moves, but in shaping them. A few weeks later, away to Tottenham Hotspur, he scored in a tight 2-1 win. The goal wasn't spectacular, and that's precisely the point. It came from recognizing the window before it closed, striking before Spurs could reset their block. That is a habit learned, not improvised. Then came West Ham United away. Villa won 3-2, and Rodgers scored twice as the game repeatedly slipped toward chaos. Each time West Ham pulled level, Rodgers restored control with clean execution. No extra touches, no hesitation. When disorder creeps in, Villa now have an attacker who thrives inside it. The statistical profile supports what the eye sees. His XG sits at 2.3/2, yet he has already scored 7 times. An indicator not of luck, but of shot selection and confidence. He has taken 15 shots on target, split almost evenly between inside and outside the box, and has already struck the woodwork twice. These are not manufactured tap-ins. These are decisions taken early, often before the defensive picture is complete. Physically, his presence is just as important. 69 duels won, 11 aerial battles claimed, 67 touches in the opposition box, alongside 18 tackles and 9 interceptions. Rodgers stays involved when Villa are forced to defend deeper or play without sustained possession. He doesn't drift out of games. He stays connected to them. This is why he has become so difficult to plan against. If opponents press him aggressively, he carries through contact. If they drop off, he shoots early. If they try to isolate him wide, he rotates inside and lets Villa's structure stretch the pitch around him. Under Unai Emery, that flexibility is not freedom for its own sake. It's controlled responsibility. And this is the key shift in Rodgers' 2025/26 season. He is no longer just contributing. He is shaping how Villa attack. He is the player who keeps appearing in the moments where games threaten to stall. Not always to finish them, but to tilt them back in Villa's favor. By the time we reach the defining fixtures later in the season, his influence does not arrive as a surprise. It arrives as confirmation of a pattern that has been building quietly, week after week. By December 2025, Morgan Rodgers was no longer being measured by promise or trajectory. The conversation had shifted to outcomes, and more importantly, to whether those outcomes arrived when margins tightened and consequences grew heavier. They did on 21st December at Villa Park against Manchester United. Aston Villa won 2-1, and Rodgers scored both goals. One arrived just before halftime, the other 12 minutes into the second half. 2 different moments, 2 different demands on the game, same result. Villa moved into Christmas sitting third, 3 points off the top, within reach of Arsenal and Manchester City. What defined the performance was not the brace itself, but the control inside it. United had territory. They created chances. Even after losing Bruno Fernandes at halftime, they remained dangerous. Matheus Cunha scored once and missed a header that should have changed the game. Villa did not dominate possession. They did not overwhelm United with pressure. They waited, and when the match narrowed into moments, Rodgers owned them. The first goal came from composure under stress. Receiving wide, he kept the ball alive, resisted the initial challenge, cut inside, and finished before United's block could settle. The second came from anticipation rather than invention. A loose ball, a quicker reaction, a cleaner execution. 2 goals that reflected his season in miniature. Arrive at the right moment, not early, not late. That night felt decisive because it fit a pattern already established. Rodgers has produced 7 goals and 3 assists in 17 league appearances, spread across 1,518 minutes. The underlying numbers explain why his impact feels heavier than the raw totals. An XG of 2.32 tells its own story. These are not chances being laid out for him. They are outcomes created by decision making, early shots, assertive positioning, and confidence to act before defensive shapes are complete. He has registered 15 shots on target, split almost evenly between distance and close range, and has struck the woodwork twice. Villa are not designing low-risk sequences for him. He is manufacturing solutions from difficult situations. Crucially, his influence does not fade when the game turns physical. Rodgers has logged 67 touches in the opposition box, won 69 duels, claimed 11 aerial battles, and still contributes defensively with 18 tackles and 9 interceptions. In a title race, that balance matters. It keeps him connected when Villa are pushed back, when control slips, when games stop being comfortable. This is why he is so difficult to plan against. He can start on the left, drift into central pockets, or arrive late beyond the striker. Step out early and he carries through contact. Hold your line and he shoots before you reset. Overload his side and he vacates it, creating space for runners beyond him. Villa do not need him to dominate possession. They need him to decide sequences. Inside the club, that evolution has already been acknowledged. Winning the PFA Young Player of the Year award and signing a contract extension through 2031 were not rewards for past form. They were statements of intent. Under Unai Emery, protection does not mean indulgence. It means trust and expectation. Rodgers has met both. Villa's home form reinforces the point. 10 consecutive home wins in all competitions. 43 Premier League home points in 2025, second only to Manchester City. 1 home league defeat all year. In fixtures where structure tightens and margins shrink, Rodgers continues to surface at the center of decisive actions. This is the difference between a good season and a season shaper. A good player helps you win the matches you expect to win. A season shaper wins the ones that keep you alive in the race. By the end of December, Aston Villa were not just talking about the title, they were still in it, and Morgan Rodgers, without being the system, without dominating headlines, was one of the reasons why. The question now is no longer whether he belongs at this level, it is how far this version of Aston Villa can go with him deciding moments like these.